It has been said that man cannot live by bread alone. It's also been said that starting a practice and maintaining a practice with just neurotoxins and fillers is hard to do. And just as we cannot live by bread alone, we need more food and more varieties and more nutrition, so too do you. You need more stuff in your practice than just neurotoxins and fillers. It's really hard to build a practice on neurotoxins and fillers and to maintain it because everyone does neurotoxins and fillers. All people from all walks of life. And when you guys come on, tell me where you're from and also tell me what your favorite energy-based treatment is, and we'll sort of talk about all of them tonight. But let me know what you guys like in terms of energy-based treatments. But the problem is, since everyone could do neurotoxins and fillers, that's kind of an entry-level thing. So for you to maintain your practice and build it, you've got to offer other stuff. Because if you don't, if someone goes to someone for some other energy-based treatment, laser, IPL, ultrasound, radio whatever it is, and they offer neurotoxins and fillers also, they might as well just stay there instead of going back and forth to all these different places where one place perhaps offers more. So in order for you to really scale, for you to already really build your practice, not only do you have to have multiple things to treat people, because you have to treat the skin and the muscle, and you have to treat with energy-based treatments as well as fillers and neurotoxins, right? So we know this. And also, it allows you to have a separate cash flow stream. So you can have other people in your practice, estheticians, nurses, RNs, NPs, whomever it is, doing these other energy-based treatments while you're doing... Hello, Nina. Hi, Nina. Good to see you again. Nina's a good example because Nina, one of the nurses that just signed on, loves Cyton. She buys Cyton technologies and does really well with it and realizes the importance of having other modalities to enhance your practice and give the patient the full service treatment. So I remember when we were starting out, we were kind of unusual as plastic surgeons because we embraced all these other technologies. We wanted to be cutting edge because I wanted to be a one-stop shopping center. So when someone came in and whatever their aesthetic need was, we could deliver those services. Back in the day when laser hair removal and tattoo removal and skin tightening were just coming out, we jumped on it, right? And when neurotoxins and fillers just came out, we jumped on it because we wanted to be able to offer all of these things. Hello, Charles and Maverick. Hello, Cyton. Your best friend Nina's on with you guys. Inmo Dawson hopefully is on because he wants us to talk about some of his technology. But I thought tonight would be a good time to give you some of the history of energy-based technologies because I've been around for a long enough time that I've pretty much seen them all. And I think some of them are really exciting. There have been some really landmark breakthroughs that I want to kind of make you aware of. Remember, if a lot of people have been talking about training with us or having me mentor them, and all that's fine. Go to the link in our bio, and you can see our school. You can see some of the curriculum that we offer. You can see where our locations are and all that sort of stuff. And we're more than happy to. Hey, there he is. I knew you were. I was just talking about you in Mode Austin. I said you paying me, I think, was how many thousands to talk about your technology. I can't remember, but we won't discuss that on the air. Hey, Kate, about time you got here. Good to see you guys again. So let's go through some of the histories of energy-based technology because a lot of people don't realize that, when you're aging, you're not just getting wrinkles and losing volume, right? Don't forget, you're losing bone, right? You're losing subcutaneous fat. You're losing muscle. It starts to atrophy as you get older, just like everything else, all the other muscles in your body. Your testosterone and estrogen levels are dropping, so naturally there's some atrophy going on. But also within the skin, you're not making as much high hyaluronic acid, you're not making as much elastin, you're not making as much collagen, and you're continually breaking it down, so there's a net loss of all those products. And what happens, of course, is that the dermis thins out. So when you hear people, hello, good evening, good to talk to you again. So when you hear people talking about, energy-based treatments, what are they really talking about? Well, they're talking about adding energy to the skin to create some sort of damage, some sort of injury, whether they're using ultrasound or radio frequency or any kind of needling device or any kind of laser. They're looking to create a bit of an injury to stimulate the skin to make more collagen, to make more elastin, to make more high hyaluronic acid so the skin thickens. And really, the holy grail of aesthetics is skin tightening. And it always has been, and it always will be. And we're searching for better. Thank you, Austin. And we're going to talk about your device, the Morpheus device, which is excellent also. But I want to give them a little bit of a history, because really the holy grail is skin tightening. And we've been searching for this since I've been in the business for 30 years. This is my 30th year in practice. And you can go to the link in our bio if you want to look at all the stuff we offer in terms of educational content for all of you, because we want to raise the level of aesthetic education in this country, because I think it really needs it. But anyway, one of the big revelations we had was CO2 laser. CO2 laser is old. I bought my laser over 25 years ago, and I still have the original one. I'm having trouble getting parts for it now, but it really still works, and it's amazing, because when you use a CO2 laser, right, which is a very ablative laser, has a lot of downside, it creates redness for a long period of time, but I'll tell you something, nothing tightens the skin like a CO2 laser. And you can see, when you pulse the laser on the skin, the first pulse removes the epidermis, and then the second layer, the second pulse, you're dealing with the dermis directly. And every time the laser pulses the skin, you can see the skin like shrink right before your very eyes. And if you do one side of the face, like say one eye or one part of the face, and look at the other side of the face, it's shrunk by almost a half. It's a tremendous amount of shrinking, but it's a tremendous amount of energy, and it's a tremendous amount of downside. But we realized at that moment that heat shrinks skin. Heat contracts collagen. Heat stimulates the production of more collagen. So we saw a tremendous thickening of the skin and a tremendous tightening. In fact, many of our first full-face CO2 laser patients look like facelift patients. In fact, some people were getting better results with full-face CO2 lasers than they were getting with surgery, with facelifting. Maybe they just weren't great facelift surgeons or whatever. But the idea was planted in our brains that we knew skin tightening worked if you added heat to it. And then, for example, if you were using a Bovie is a little electrical device that cauterizes blood vessels. And if you have a piece of dermis and you're cauterizing it, you can see the skin shrinking back before your very eyes. And that gets very hot. Maybe it's 85, 90 degrees centigrade. It's very, very, very hot. But it's meant to be hot to coagulate skin. So again, we've known this for a long time, but you can't Bovie someone's face. And CO2 laser, although it's still useful, has been largely replaced by kinder, gentler sort of, hello, my Elevate. We need to get together, guys. Sid Lambert, about time. Been hearing some great things about you. We were just in your family store the other day getting some salads, and they said, Sid Lambert, Terrence on this place. So with that idea, people started doing other things. So the first thing they did is they said, okay, CO2 laser is too ablative. It's not for the general public. It's a lot of downtime. People were getting their faces burned. It was on Connie Chung, and it was this terrible thing. But it's a great laser. As I said, I still have mine 25 years later, and I still use it because I know how to use it. I know how to do it. So they started making a different kind of laser, erbium laser, fractionated CO2 laser, sort of a kinder, gentler version. So the downtime was less, the pain was less, the recovery was less. But guess what also was less? The results were less, right? So the more you injure the skin, the more heat you add to the skin, the better the result. But the longer the downtime and the more painful it is. The more gentle you are, the less energy you add, the less damage you do, the less repair you get, and the less result. So people understood that, right? So that was the balance. Like, we'll make it gentler and kinder, and people will come to us because there won't be so much downtime. And to a large extent, that was true, but they weren't getting the results. File that away. So over time, people realized, okay, let's start adding heat to the skin, but let's do it in a nice way. So they started doing some radio frequency treatments, some laser treatments, even some ultrasound treatments. And the way they did it was they had this constant supply of energy coming out, and you would keep the device moving. Right? So like if you had a candle under your hand, you wouldn't just keep it there. You would kind of move the candle around to heat your hand up before you would, in an effort not to burn it. So as long as you kept it moving, the patients could kind of tolerate it. And then, once you started getting up to like 37, 38, 39, certainly by 40 degrees, it was too much, and you had to stop. So it was a suboptimal treatment, but it was doing something, right? And honestly, we all oversold it because we thought it was, along with positivity. Good to see you. She posts these most positive intended Instagram posts of anybody, and thank you for joining. I always enjoy listening to your comments. So by moving the devices slow, with pace, you weren't burning the skin, but you were getting some result. And again, we oversold it because we didn't really understand. And I think in retrospect, a lot of those devices were really meant for the current generation, where it's really more about prevention and being sort of proactive than it is really about treating aging, right? When you're treating aging, someone who's already aging, you have to be much more aggressive than someone who's a millennial or 20 or 30 in that age group, where they're less like, I see a little this, I see a little that. Those energy-based devices that you keep moving are enough, and they at least kind of forestall things and create a little scar tissue, and they're helpful. But still, we hadn't gotten to the Holy Grail. We still hadn't really figured out skin tightening in a way that made it approachable for all patients. So the next big breakthrough was actually increasing the amount of heat to the skin in a rather dramatic way, and that was Ultherapy, right? So we took ultrasound, which is normally diagnostic to see if there's a baby in your uterus or if there's a blockage in your artery or whatever. But instead of that, focusing on targeting the fascia, right? So it was a high energy device that lasted for a very short period of time, but it targeted the fascia, the deep fascia. Tatiana, good to see you as well. Thank you for joining. So it targeted the deep fascia, and it was effective. It actually did something, but it hurt like hell. It really hurt like hell, and it was, some patients just said, I'm never going to do that again. It was just too much for me. So the Ultherapy people came in and they reprogrammed it. So they were giving more pulses at lower energy, right? And so it sort of worked. But honestly, you were pulling the fascia, right? So you had to get a lot of movement on the fascia to get any kind of movement on the skin. So it was a good thing. But again, I think another device that works great in people who don't really need it, right? Like it works great in young people who are just starting to show a little bit of laxity and say, I don't want to see this aging coming on, and you get them tight and they stay tight, right? Because again, it creates scar tissue. So, but that was a breakthrough. It's like high energy for short periods of time created some positive effect, right? So Ulthera is still around. We're going to talk about soft wave, which may be the second generation of ultrasound therapy, and we're having a soft wave event at my school on Friday, which I'll talk about in a minute, because I'm really impressed with this technology. And hopefully InMode will follow up with that and sort of see what we're doing with SoftWave and say, we want to do that too. But that was the first breakthrough. But it was painful. It was focused ultrasound, and it got a good result, but most people weren't really excited about the second treatment. But it was fairly long lasting. And this was before we had Pronox or any of the the treatments, so people were just biting bullets to do it. Then along came Thermogen, but let me talk about one other thing. Whether you're using radio frequency, ultrasound, laser, or now these plasma devices, they're all limited by the same exact thing. When you're using them topically and you're moving them around the skin, you can only get to a certain point, no matter what the energy is, before it hurts too much, right? When you get anywhere close, everyone has a different pain tolerance, but somewhere between 37 and 40 degrees centigrade, everybody bails out. That's enough, move, ow, And it's uncomfortable as a provider to, be hurting a patient, and patients are some are better than others, but still they're all limited by the same way. Then one day, I ran across this technology called Thermogen. Thermogen was a device that actually went underneath the skin, okay? So you're saying, well, how could it go underneath the skin? Well, we did it the way we would do liposuction. We put fluid under the skin that had xylocaine in it and some epinephrine to create vasoconstriction. And we can move this device underneath the skin, and it was unipolar. It was just a little, like the inside of this pen. And at the end of it, it threw out radio frequency. Now, radio frequency is great because it's colorblind. It doesn't matter what color your skin is, how much or how little pigment you have in it. It doesn't matter. It's just heating. So as opposed to laser or other IPL or other devices that look for pigment, this just was bulk heating. And it worked, but it was like literally watching paint dry. It was so painfully boring and horrible, an hour long. We actually had someone in the room with us with a camera, with a thermal camera, and they were moving it over the skin as we were doing it. And it was playing up on a screen, and we were seeing how hot it was getting. When it got too hot, we had to back out. We didn't know exactly, what we were doing, but we could see that when we got too hot, we had to move. But we could see how hot the skin was getting. And again, we got it up into that low 40 range, and we can get it as hot as we want because the patient was numb. And we got some really good results. Not everybody. And it was really slow because, again, it was unipolar, so it was bulk heating, right? We couldn't focus on certain spots. And all of a sudden we started seeing some really nice results. But I don't know, it was like, oh no, not another Thermogen day. We're going to be in the room for 3 hours, like doing this, going back and forth, trying to find things to talk about. But we knew it worked. So that was a really breakthrough moment. And then one day, I was looking through some kind of magazine or something, and I saw this device that was just like the Thermogen, but it was bipolar, right? And one part was on the outside of the skin, and the other part was on the inside of the skin. So it was kind of doing this. It was heating through the skin, but it was bipolar, so it was very directed. And the device was called Face Tight. There's also a Body Tight and an AccuTight that go along with them. And you could suddenly control the heat. You could set the temperature of the external probe and the internal probe, and you could deliver heat at whatever temperature you wanted it to for whatever period of time you wanted it to. And the machine would start dinging and binging and giving you audible cues as to when you were starting to get to the this temperature you set it at, let's say 42 degrees. And it would be like when you got to the 42 degrees, it sounded like you were in Las Vegas, like bing, 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 bing. So it was like, you were like, everyone was in the room was like cheering and clapping. So it kind of was very smart and gave you some feedback as to when you were getting close to, burning the patient. But as it got close to that temperature, once it hit the temperature, it stopped delivering energy. So it was very smart, very safe. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, that's it. And that's been a great, great advance. Like that bipolar control of heat really allows us to shrink skin. But that's even been surpassed by something else. The story gets better. The limitations of that were simply that, it was an invasive technology and it had to be done by a doc or surgeon, that sort of thing. And developed one for the body. They developed a small one for like under the eye or for the nasolabial folds and those sort of areas. And I use it all the time. I think I'm one of the biggest users, certainly in the Northeast, whatever. And I was an early adopter because I really believe in these new technologies. So that was kind of cool. Right along that same sort of time, there was this new concept called microneedling that I'm sure everyone knows about now. We can't call it that in Massachusetts because it's illegal for nurses and anyone to do microneedling because they think it somehow has needles and it's somehow like acupuncture or something. So the Board of Registration of Nursing doesn't even. So we can't say the M word. We say collagen induction therapy. So the idea of putting these little channels, these little holes in the skin to create a little bit of an injury, to create some stimulation of the collagen, great concept, great idea. Maybe drive some PRP in there, maybe drive some, collagen stimulating stuff in there, whatever, some growth factors. Excellent idea. Inmode Austin here invented the idea of, he said, Inmode Austin came on and said, you know what? Putting holes in the skin is a good idea because we know it stimulates collagen and does things to scars and that sort of stuff. But what if we were to, instead of just coming out, what if while we were in the skin, we were to actually inject radio frequency into the skin? Because honestly, for you to get skin tightening, what you really need to tighten is the dermis. To be perfectly honest, folks, that's the only thing you have available that really can shrink and tighten because that's where all the collagen is. Right? Once you get into the subcutaneous fat, there's nothing there. The epidermis doesn't contract. The fascia, you can contract a little bit with Ultherapy, but honestly, the dermis is where it's at. The dermis is the holy grail for skin tightening, right? So Austin said, why are you laughing? I'm telling you the truth, right? So these pins go into the skin. When they're in the skin, this radio frequency goes between the pins, and you get this incredible tightening. That's really, really that was an exciting breakthrough. And you want to throw a little PRP in there to really stimulate your collagen production. And, Morpheus 8, there are many devices that do this, but certainly Morpheus 8 is probably the most popular device of its kind in terms of radio frequency, with microneedling. So our man Austin, who's here, has been a good friend of ours in the practice, and that device, it sells like crazy. So that concept of adding energy to a previous device, really sort of made a synergistic leap to the next level. And then in terms of the ultrasound thing, there's a new device called SoftWave. And SoftWave is kind of using the concept that Inmode Austin brought forward, in that instead of targeting the deep fascia, which Ulthera does, they target 1.5 millimeters into the dermis. And as I said, that middle portion of the dermis is really where you need to be to get tightening. So the other thing they added was contact cooling. Contact cooling was added to laser devices years ago because they knew it was too painful to do, and also they wanted to protect the epidermis. So if you're using a device where they're cooling the skin, you could do almost anything you want to in terms of laser, radio frequency, ultrasound, whatever, and it would be much more comfortable. And you can adjust and control the amount of cooling in terms of 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, that sort of thing, and you can pulse away. That's called soft wave, which is targeted ultrasound, but it's targeted much more superficially. It's less painful than Ultherapy. I believe it's more effective than Ultherapy because it's targeting the dermis. They could probably actually both be used, but I think if I only had to use one, I don't love pain either, so I would choose the soft wave. We're having a soft wave event at my school in Massachusetts on Friday. The CEO of the company, the CFO, some of the salespeople, people from my office are going to be there. We're going to have 3 or 4 devices available for people to use, to sell. We're going to have an incredible special to sell the devices at very, very, show prices, basically one time kind of only event. Because I believe in it. We've used it for several years now. We were one of the first users of adopters of this technology. Not all new technology is good, but good technology is always great. We love it, and it'll be around for a long time. So that kind of was another breakthrough, taking a previously available technology, modifying it so that it was more effective, less painful, and faster. And that's what people want, right? And the disposables are less also. The other new development is plasma. Plasma is everywhere. Plasma is literally exploding because that's kind of how it works. It explodes. And plasma, is used where they're using either helium or nitrogen gas. They're exciting the electrodes with radio frequency. And I was watching this the other day. They were doing it, some members of my staff. And it was like little explosions, really fast. And they brought in this little piece of chicken also, and they were showing me on a piece of chicken how it would actually work, and it kind of arcs. It reminds me very much of a bovie, and a bovie is what I told you 30 years ago we realized that the bovie, that really high energy of the bovie for a really short period of time gets this incredible contraction of the collagen. And with these plasma devices, I was seeing the same thing. We're going to test it in patients, obviously. It is a device that's available outside, but I haven't personally tested it, and I will. But the concept is appealing to me because instead of like 40 degrees centigrade, which you can do with most of these other devices, which is a kind of a slow heat, this is like a really rapid heat that doubles the temperature to like 85 degrees centigrade, which is like a couple hundred degrees. I mean, really hot, but for like a fraction of a second. So it's these little explosions. And, since there isn't a lot of thermal heating, since the high temperature doesn't last very long, it doesn't really damage the tissue, but it gets the maximum amount of contraction. At least that's what they're selling you. I will come back and tell you once I've tested it on a real person rather than a piece of chicken, how it works clinically. But see, that was kind of the same idea. It's like they took this idea of heating. They said, how can we get something really hot? Because we know we have to get it hot like a CO2. We know we have to get it hot like a bovie, but no patient can tolerate it. But what if we use the same technique that Thermogen used? Right? So they're all borrowing technology, mixing and matching things. Let's use that Thermogen technology where we put a single probe underneath the skin. If you were to pick one device for a brand new, which one would you pick? Everyone has to have a hydrofacial. Everyone should have, Diamond Glow or some kind of glow device. Everyone should have that. Everyone should have something that tightens the skin, whether it's like a Morpheus device or a soft wave device. Everyone wants some sort of pigment treatment and pigmentation. If you use IPL, I probably should have a different show on like all the things that you should get first. But you have to do neurotoxin fillers 1 and 2. You have to have an energy-based treatment that tightens the skin, whether it's microneedling with RF, microneedling RF PRP. None of these cost a lot of money. Something like soft wave, something that helps with texturing and tightening. And then with lasers, you got to do something for pigment. You got to do something for vascular and maybe for tightening. Like if you just do some of those things. And even just the very first thing you should get is a Diamond Glow or some sort of hydrofacial kind of device, because everyone loves it. It doesn't cost a lot. You can add it on to one of your other treatments. Once people get it, they keep coming back, and then you can start selling them on other things. It doesn't cost much to buy it. Your cost of doing it's a few bucks. You can charge $100, $150. You could add a peel onto it. All these kinds of things for skincare. So, but I could have a whole separate show on like how should you build a med spa. But hopefully I answered your question. Tell me what you guys' favorite energy-based treatment is. I want to hear what you guys use, what you think works, or what was like the worst energy-based treatment you think doesn't work at all. But the plasma devices combined all of those things, right? high energy, very short period of time, comfortable for the patient because it's under the skin, and there's no pain to the patient. So I think we have gotten closer. What would be a very portable energy device for those of us who are doing a great deal of concierge work with no permanent location? The most portable device, microneedling. You have a little tiny bag like this. Microneedling with PRP would be great. All the other devices have some size to them. Like, for example, SoftWave is pretty small. InMode's device is pretty small, but you need, if you're a woman and you're small, it's going to be hard to transport it. You could transport them in a car, but they're hard. There's no really great small device, but I would at least do a hydrofacial, diamond glow, microneedling, those kinds of things. You don't need a lot, but that's a good way to start. Virtual Rf Microneedling, I'm sure Austin thinks that's a terrible device, but it's the same concept, Sid. It's energy-based treatment, and we know microneedling works, and we know RF works, and we know the combination works even better. So you need a spa. Well, come to us, and we'll help you get one. Tracy, the cosmetic nurse. So those are the kind of things. So it's taking, this concept of heat to change the way the skin works, to tighten it, to stimulate collagen production, elastin production, hyaluronic acid production. And the thing is, with energy-based devices, it's not one and done, right? It's not one and done. These are like, people get their nails manicured every week or two. They get their hair cut every month or so. They get it colored. They do all these things, right? So it's like, why should your skin be any different? People come in for these treatments monthly, every couple months, whatever their budget allows them to do. But it's an ongoing battle, right? I mean, you don't just let your hair grow down to your shoulders and then cut it again and let your hair go. You cut it, or whatever you do, you shave every day or whatever. So, it's all about maintenance. And once you introduce the concept of energy-based treatments and people start seeing the power of energy-based treatments, they will come back because they will provide them. Jay, plasma seems awesome. Yep. I think plasma, potentially could be the next thing. I was just talking to someone who said there may be soon on the market, maybe Q1 or 2 next year, an ablative external plasma device, right, that really kind of competes with the CO2 laser, which I would love to see, because the CO2, for all it's been worth and all the greatness it does, there is a lot of downtime, and I've seen persistent erythema for months and months in some patients, and it's, it's a battle. I mean, you can eventually win it, but it's tough, but it does give amazing results. So if something, thank you. We do try to be the best, and we try to be the best for you guys, because we want to teach you guys what's right, what's wrong, and what's good and what's not. And I'm here to help you with that. And if you want to go to the link in our bio, you can see the courses we offer, the classes we teach. Some people wanted to be mentored by me. And it's all there. So thank you for joining. Any other devices that you guys use that you like or don't like? Saitan, yeah. Change your skin like you change your clocks at a minimum. You're right. But you know what? Even a broken clock is right twice a day. Yeah, I thought that was kind of a funny joke. If you think about it. Cutera finally joined. Where have you guys been? Like, you missed my whole show. I talked about Cutera endlessly. Now I'm going to have to retract everything I said because they never showed up. But, all the devices work. The other interesting thing about energy-based devices, when you get into them, one of the most important things, and we were talking about this tonight with cool sculpting and some other things, it's really important to know who not to treat. Because all the devices work if you use them on the right patients. All the devices don't work if you use them on the wrong patients. And there's nothing worse than seeing someone who, for example, we were talking about cool sculpting, is an abdominoplasty candidate, and they go into someplace and they're like, oh yeah, we can cool sculpt you. No, you can't. That's a terrible thing to do. Or, someone who's, really needs a facelift, and someone's trying to treat them with fillers and neurotoxins or whatever. So, part of it is really being honest with yourself and really being honest with the patient. It's in the hands of the technician. Yeah, you're right. The technician is very important. A lot of these things are very injector and operator dependent. And if you don't know who not to treat, you're going to make mistakes. And that's really the last thing you need is a disappointed patient. A disappointed patient will be disappointed and really not like you, probably give you bad reviews and sort of say, why'd you do that? And then they'll want money back and you won't want to give it back, and then it'll be ugly. So be conservative, stay within your lane, know what you can do with your device, right? Not every device can do everything. And sometimes when you have a device and you're like, so you see someone, you're just like you're kind of beyond the scope of this device. Either you send them to someone else or you get a better device, right? Which is really what this is all about. So my bottom line is that all energy-based treatments are good. The holy grail that we've been searching for 30 years is skin tightening, and we're getting better at it. Starting with the CO2 laser and going up today to the plasma generating devices. Get one, get your practice to the next level. Don't lose those patients to someone who has those devices, who also does neurotoxin fillers like everyone on the block does. Differentiate yourself, become an expert at something. It kind of doesn't even really matter what your device is, as long as you can do a really good job with it. Like my CO2 laser is 25 or 30 years old, and I still use it and get good results with it. Some people might laugh, but I can get great results because I've used it for so long. I know exactly what to do and what not to do. Maybe it's old-fashioned. It doesn't matter what it is or what it costs or who has what. It matters what you do with the device and the technology in your hand. So hopefully this has been helpful tonight. Kate, you're welcome. You are just soaking up so much knowledge. I think your head's probably doubled in size since I met you. But I thank all of you for joining. I'll see you next week. I'm not sure what we're going to talk about, but it'll be something interesting. Good night.